He was angry. But he didn't shout, didn't slam anything. He just stood still, back straight, hands clenched, and his stare alone silenced the entire counter. That man was Colonel Elijah Ward, and in his hands wasn't a weapon, but an urn. Ashes of a soldier who once saved an entire unit in Syria's storm of bullets. They said he couldn't board because of procedure, but they didn't see the name tag on his chest, didn't know the man in that urn was a black soldier with honors, looked down on even by his own unit. This story started with a quiet shake of the head at a check-in counter and ended with a message no one in America could ignore. It was Monday morning. People moved through Denver airport like clockwork, roller bags clicking, kids whining, announcements humming overhead. No one paid attention to anyone else. No one noticed what others were carrying, except one man in full military uniform, walking slow, as if every step carried a name. Colonel Elijah Ward, 30 years in service, 3 war zones, 4 medals, and 1 promise left to keep. No luggage, just a velvet-wrapped box in his hands, an urn. People assumed it was a gift. He knew it was Marcus Lee, 27, the first black recruit Elijah ever chose. Not the strongest, but the one who never quit. He never asked, "When's leave?" He asked, "How can I be someone they trust?" In Syria, Marcus ran out of cover under fire to save a wounded man, the son of a senator. He took a bullet pulling him back, died in Elijah's arms. No headlines, no color mentioned in the report. But Elijah remembered. That morning, they told him, no ceremony, no media, just internal transport. He didn't care. He wasn't doing it for protocol, but for a promise. A promise Marcus once made him laugh about between cold meals. "If I go down, you'll bring me home, right? But don't let them reduce me to just 3 letters. I hate those blank, soulless tags." Now Marcus was in the box, silent, small, but heavy in all the ways that matter. Elijah walked up to the counter, handed over every paper, ID, orders, proof, everything was valid. But the clerk, young, maybe 25, paused. She glanced at his ID, frowned, typed something, and said, "I'm sorry, sir, just a moment." He'd heard that tone too many times before. She returned. Polite smile, but her eyes didn't match. "You can't board this flight. Your name is on the SSS list, enhanced security. We can't override it. SSS, 4 letters, for the wrong name, the wrong look, the wrong shade of skin." Elijah didn't argue, just nodded, and held the urn tighter. No one knew what was about to happen. Because sometimes, one man standing still is all it takes for the whole system to bow. The soldier in that urn didn't die from bullets. He died for his country, and he should have come home like a hero. Marcus Lee grew up on the south side of Chicago, where cracked walls and leaking ceilings were childhood memories. The youngest of 4 kids, he lived in a cramped apartment where sirens played background to late-night arguments about rent. His father was arrested when Marcus was 3. His mother, Clara, worked night shifts cleaning hospital floors, leaving before sunrise and returning long after. Marcus never had breakfast with her, but always left a seat at the table, just in case she ever could. Clara once told Elijah, her voice tight, "When he was little, Marcus used to sit by the window, watching me leave for work in the dark. He said he wanted to make me proud, just once. I told him, 'Just be a good person, baby.' But Marcus shook his head. He said, 'That's not enough, Mama. I want to do something bigger.' He wasn't a standout student. In 7th grade, a teacher told him, 'With your background, Marcus, maybe lower your expectations.' He didn't answer, just scribbled in his notebook, 'I'll prove her wrong.' That line in blue ink still rests in a journal Clara keeps under her pillow. Marcus enlisted at 18. No scholarship, no recommendation, no plan B. He failed the first military exam, got pushed into logistics. Some called it the leftover bin. But Marcus never quit. Whether it was hauling ammo, wading through mud, or carrying the wounded, he took every task. 3 years later, he stood on the front line. Not by luck, but by silent persistence. Elijah first met Marcus during a field drill in Arizona. Marcus was lean, quiet, dark-skinned, always at the back of the line. When the squad ran out of strength, Marcus climbed the wall 3 times, palms bleeding, never stopping. After the session, he walked up to Elijah and said, "I'm not the best, sir, but I don't want to be cut for not trying hard enough." Elijah remembered those eyes. Not proud, just burning with something deeper. One night in camp, Elijah saw Marcus writing a letter under a flickering light. "What are you working on?" he asked. Marcus smiled and folded the letter. "Just telling my mom I'm okay, and if one day I don't make it back, she'll know I gave it my all." Elijah nodded, but inside a strange feeling stirred, as if Marcus already knew how it would end. On the front lines, Marcus was the only black soldier in Recon Unit 4. When assigned as lead scout, a teammate joked, "Didn't know diversity hires got us into battle zones now." Nicknames followed: Token Black, Southside Soldier. Marcus didn't argue, just kept doing his job. The harder jobs mostly. Once he carried 2 ammo packs for a wounded buddy, even with his own shoulder torn and bleeding. Southside wasn't just where he grew up. It was a line he never stopped crossing, where kids learned to survive by staying quiet. Marcus chose to stand up. Clara once said, he didn't want to just survive. He wanted to live a life worth remembering. And Elijah remembered, not just because Marcus served under him, but because Marcus once asked, "How do I become someone others can count on?" On their final day in Syria, the unit was ambushed near a mountain pass. A soldier, the son of a senator, was hit bad. Marcus ran into open fire to drag him back to cover. A bullet struck Marcus just as he crossed into safety. He collapsed into Elijah's arms. Dust, smoke, and silence. No trumpets, no headlines, just 2 soldiers, alone in the dirt. Elijah never forgot Marcus's words, weeks earlier during a meal split in rations. "If I fall, sir, don't let them write my name down as just 3 cold letters. I hate those empty tags." Now Marcus rests in a velvet-lined box. Elijah wasn't angry about being stopped at the airport. He was angry because they didn't know who Marcus was, a man who lived and died for honor. He was angry because Clara, back in her wooden house in Arkansas, was still waiting, proud but never recognized. There are moments when a person's dignity rests in someone else's hands, just because they control the button that says approve or deny. Elijah stood still in the terminal. The urn in his hands felt heavier than any order he'd ever received. The young woman behind the counter looked at him, polite, distant, the kind of look Elijah had seen far too many times before. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "With the SSS code, you'll need additional clearance, and TSA regulations don't allow cremated remains in the cabin without special authorization." Elijah's voice stayed calm. "Is there someone here with that authority?" She didn't answer. A mid-level manager approached, whispered something in her ear. Elijah caught part of it. Just process it quietly. He placed the urn on the counter, firmly but gently, removed his cap, straightened his back, and spoke like he was calling formation. "The man in this urn is Sergeant Marcus Lee. He died pulling a wounded soldier to safety. That soldier was the son of a U.S. senator. And now you want me to check his ashes with the luggage?" Someone nearby stopped rolling their suitcase. A mother carrying a baby whispered, "Is he a soldier?" A young man began filming. Elijah's voice turned sharper, like a knife slicing through silence.
If this is the country I fought to protect, then right here, right now, I want to know if a black soldier counts as a man." His words spread faster than the intercom. A live stream started. Within minutes, the video was trending on Twitter under the hashtag Honor Marcus Lee. The airport spiraled into chaos. PR phones rang non-stop. Check-in counter 4 was shut down. 15 minutes later, Gregory Haynes, director of Denver International, arrived, rushing toward Elijah. He stopped, looked at the urn, and bowed his head. "Colonel Ward, I'm sorry. This was a system failure, but it was our failure too, for letting it run blindly." Elijah said nothing. He just kept his eyes on the urn. The director turned to his team. "Remove the SSS code. Allow the urn in the cabin immediately. And book first class. Not for the rank of the man holding it, but for the one inside who earned that seat." Elijah nodded, held the urn tighter, and walked through security. As he passed through the terminal, a woman stopped her wheelchair and placed her hand on her heart. A veteran raised a salute. A young boy removed his cap, eyes wide and wet. A spontaneous honor guard had formed. No orders, no words, just people, paying respect. CNN picked up the video hours later. Their caption read, "Some things don't need approval to be honored." Elijah sat in the first-class cabin. The seat beside him left empty, like it belonged to Marcus. He stared out the window, but his mind was already in Arkansas, where Clara sat in a wooden house, still waiting for her son to come home the right way.
A soldier's honor isn't in the medals they earn, but in the choices they make when no one's watching. After the burial, Elijah didn't go home. He took a bus across state lines to a small town in Arkansas, where an old wooden house stood and where Clara Lee had lived her whole life waiting for a son who never returned. Clara didn't cry when she saw Elijah. Her hands, rough from years of cleaning hospital floors at night, held his firmly. "Marcus once wrote," she said softly, "if he couldn't make it home, he wanted to be brought back by the one officer he trusted most." Inside the house, photos of Marcus lined the walls. Marcus grinning by a basketball court. Marcus in his first military uniform, his eyes bright with hope. But Elijah paused at a small wooden box filled with handwritten letters Marcus had sent to his mother, letters no one else had ever seen. Clara placed the box on the table, her voice shaking. "He didn't talk much about the war, but these letters, they're all I have left of him." Elijah opened one. The handwriting was careful. "Mama, today I saved 2 lives, but I didn't make the report. Maybe I don't fit the image they want. I fight because if I don't, no one else will." Another letter, written after a shelling in Syria. "Mama, I'm okay, but they say my word isn't strong enough for a medal because the officer in charge wasn't there to witness it." Elijah clenched the paper in his fist. "Did the army send you anything?" he asked. Clara shook her head. Her hand brushed over Marcus's framed photo. "Just a folded flag and a scripted apology. He once told me, 'Mama, I don't need glory. I just want to rest like a decent man.'" Elijah left the next morning. In his bag, a copy of every letter, and in his mind, a decision. If America couldn't face its failures, then Marcus's own words would speak for him. The image of Elijah walking back into the city, one hand holding a worn duffel with Marcus's letters, the other carrying a wooden box engraved with the words, "I don't need glory, I just need dignity." That image was a promise, one strong enough to shake a nation. Some letters are never mailed, but they still shake the conscience of a nation. Among Marcus's letters, Elijah found one that was never folded, never sealed. It was scribbled on a crumpled page, hidden between worn-out maps in a dusty field notebook. The handwriting was rushed, incomplete, but every line hit Elijah like a bullet. "Mama, I don't know if I'll make it through tonight, but I'm okay. Today, for the first time, a white soldier called me brother. I don't need them to like me, just to believe me. If I say there's an enemy behind us, I want someone to fire, not wait for confirmation. If I don't make it back, please don't let them forget me. Don't let me become just a name in a report. Elijah sat still for nearly an hour. He didn't cry. He typed every word and posted the letter online. Captioned simply, "The final letter of Marcus Lee. A soldier who asked for no praise, only trust." Overnight, millions knew Marcus's name. The letter spread like wildfire. Tweets and posts flooded the internet. Honor Marcus Lee. He speaks for the forgotten. But not everyone agreed. A conservative blog claimed it was a sob story crafted for sympathy. A retired officer commented on X, "Marcus just did his job. Stop turning him into a symbol because of his skin color." Another commentator wrote, "This is a personal tale. It doesn't reflect the entire system." Elijah didn't argue. He simply reposted the letter with one line, "Read it, then decide." In less than 24 hours, it hit over 2 million shares. One reply came from an old classmate. "He always showed up early, left late, never complained. I borrowed his notes once, never asked if he was okay." Then, a witness stepped forward. David, a young soldier Marcus once saved, appeared on a local news channel. "I was hit during an ambush in Syria," he said, voice shaking, eyes red. "Marcus ran out and dragged me back, knowing he might die. I owe him my life, but I never thanked him." David paused, wiping tears. "I used to think race didn't matter. Now I realize my silence made him feel even more alone." His words weren't just testimony, they were confession. And they proved Marcus hadn't been alone. Across the country, groups of black veterans began speaking out. They told stories of being sidelined, doubted, dismissed, just like Marcus. James, a retired sergeant, said, "I served 20 years. I've seen men like Marcus passed over. That letter, that's the voice we've all been waiting for." Then came a call from Samuel Grant, a journalist from The Atlantic. "I want to tell this story," he said, "because how we treat silent soldiers defines who we are." Elijah agreed, under one condition: don't turn him into a hero. Just tell it the way Marcus lived, quiet and kind. The article dropped a week later, titled "The Nameless Soldier," a letter that stirred a nation's conscience. It quoted Marcus's letter, Clara's memories, and photos of Marcus in uniform, smiling, strong, silent. The closing line read, "If silence killed him once, our voices might let him live again." That night on CNN, an old staff sergeant spoke, hands trembling. "I hesitated when Marcus yelled, 'Cover the right flank,' just because he was black. Next time, he didn't wait. He ran into the fire." The anchor added quietly, "Racism still has the power to kill, even those who risk everything to save others." One evening, Elijah received a call from Washington. "Colonel Ward, we'd like to invite you to a roundtable at the Department of Defense to talk about Marcus Lee." Elijah answered, "I'm not looking for a tribute. I want them to face the truth." Marcus's letter was no longer just ink on paper. It had become a flame, a slow-burning fire, waiting to tear down the wall of silence.
America can be moved, but it's still a machine built on paperwork. Elijah knew he wasn't up against a person. He was facing a system skilled at silencing anyone who didn't fit the mold. 3 days after Marcus's letter went viral, the Department of Defense sent an invitation. Elijah arrived, letter in hand, grip firm. Before stepping into the meeting room, he paused, looked down at the worn paper in his pocket, and thought, "If I stay silent today, would Marcus forgive me?" The question cut like a blade, but it was the very reason he came. The room was spotless, cold. Paper stacks lined the table like layers of bureaucratic armor. Elijah sat at the head, facing 3 people: a legal advisor, a metals officer, and a spokesperson, tape recorder already rolling. "Mr. Ward," the spokesperson began, "the department extends its condolences. Sergeant Marcus Lee's case has been sent to the Special Review Board, but awarding posthumous honors requires time, verification, and documented proof." Elijah nodded slightly. His eyes gave no thanks. The legal advisor added, "Marcus's report was filed by an acting lieutenant. There's no video, no confirmation from a commanding officer. We can't approve the citation." Elijah sat up straighter. His voice was low but sharp. "If Marcus were white, would that file have been ignored 4 years ago?" Silence. A quiet cough. Someone turned a page, avoiding his eyes. Elijah placed Marcus's letter on the table. "This is the proof. Marcus never needed medals to live with honor. But what you need is the courage to admit he was denied, not for lack of valor, but because his skin made his words easy to dismiss." One member asked for a 5-minute break. Elijah knew this wasn't just about a medal. This was about whether the system could own its failure out loud. When they reconvened, the spokesperson said, "We understand your message." Elijah stood, placed his cap back on, and replied, "I don't need you to understand. I need America to hear the truth." 30 minutes later, he stepped out of the Pentagon. The sky over Washington was gray. Reporters stood waiting outside the gate. Elijah didn't speak. He simply handed them copies of Marcus's letter, then walked away, carrying the fire that letter had lit, ready for Samuel Grant and the rest of America to carry it forward.
30 minutes after leaving the Pentagon, Elijah walked into the offices of The Atlantic. Samuel Grant, the journalist who first told Marcus's story, was waiting in a small room. No lights, no makeup, just a camera, a jug of water, and 2 sharp questions. Do you believe the people who stayed silent for 4 years deserve blame? What responsibility do they carry for Marcus being forgotten? Elijah poured himself a glass of water, set it down, and stared straight into the lens. Silence isn't neutrality. Silence is complicity. The ones who sat at the same table with Marcus, but turned away when he needed them, they don't get to claim innocence now. That night, the interview aired. No music, no cuts, just Elijah's voice, clear and cutting. In 2 hours, #MarcusLee was the top trend on Twitter. One user, who said he once studied with Marcus, posted, "He always showed up early, stayed late, never complained. I copied his notes once, but I never once asked if he was okay." NBC hosted a panel titled "Honor and Silence: Who Do We Leave Behind?" On stage sat a retired lieutenant colonel opposing Marcus's medal, a war reporter from Syria, and Clara Lee. The host turned to Clara. "If Marcus were alive, do you think he would forgive us?" Clara, clutching her son's wrinkled letter, answered softly. "Marcus once wrote, 'I don't need them to love me. I just want them to believe I was a good soldier.' If they believe him now, he forgave them long ago." The studio fell silent. The audience applauded, not out of pity, but because they finally saw the truth they had scrolled past. The next morning, Wendy Moss from PBS called Elijah. "I want to tell Marcus's story, not as a hero, but as someone who was hurt and still chose kindness." Elijah agreed. And so began the documentary, The Voice Inside. He narrated it himself, using Marcus's real letter and testimonies from those who had once stayed silent. In the final scene, Elijah stood in front of the camera holding the unopened letter. Don't call Marcus a hero if you're not ready to call silence what it really was, a mistake. That image, a worn soldier, a fragile letter, and a voice that no longer shook, became the fire that led the way to Arlington,
where Marcus Lee's story would be carved into memory, not just by name, but by truth.
The Voice Inside aired on Sunday evening, prime family hour. But that night, America went quiet. Not out of shock, but as if hearing something they should have known all along. The program opened with footage of Marcus in Syria, helping a fellow soldier unstrap a heavy backpack, red dirt clinging to his boots. No epic music, just the sound of breathing, and Elijah's voice gently narrating. This is Marcus Lee, a soldier who didn't need his name remembered, only wanted to be believed when he spoke. We failed him. There were no dramatizations, just voices of those who once turned away, now forced to face their memory. A white sergeant, eyes red, admitted, "I thought I wasn't racist, but I never listened when Marcus gave feedback. I always looked to someone else. My silence was the last wall he had to climb." Clara Lee didn't appear on the show. She told the producers, "Don't make people cry over my son. I want them to ask themselves, what would they do if they met another Marcus?" In the second half of the program, Elijah stood in a quiet room, walls lined with photos of Marcus, smiling, shoulders caked in mud. He read Marcus's final letter aloud, no edits. Each word echoed like it came straight from the battlefield. When he finished, the audience didn't applaud. They just listened, as if Marcus was still speaking through the smoke. After the broadcast, PBS phone lines overflowed, with texts, emails, voicemails, apologies. A military clerk wrote, "I used to flag names that didn't fit. I was wrong." The next morning, the White House acknowledged an error in Marcus's file. They issued a public apology to his family and to all the unheard voices he now represented. Elijah didn't attend the press conference. He was at Arlington, where Marcus's ashes were finally laid to rest with full military honors. The sky was gray. A silver-haired veteran, hand trembling, placed flowers on Marcus's grave and whispered, "Thank you, brother. We made you wait far too long." In the reserved rows, full of generals and reporters, people stood, giving up their seats to men who once served beside Marcus. Those veterans stepped forward, stood at attention, and spoke together. Sergeant Marcus Lee, the man who saved us, who taught us what honor really means. One of them added, voice breaking, "You were our brother from day one." Elijah didn't stop there. He founded the Marcus Lee Scholarship Fund for low-income students from Chicago's South Side. At the fund's launch, a 16-year-old boy with bright eyes, just like Marcus once had, said, "I want to be a doctor, so no one ever gets left behind, like Marcus." That first year, 20 students received support. Each one carried a note from Elijah. "Kindness is enough, but courage to speak up, that's how you change the world." Marcus never needed a statue. He only wanted to be trusted when he warned of danger, to be heard when he spoke, to be called by name with respect. Millions never met Marcus, but his story belonged to every voice ever ignored. And if we truly listen, no one has to die a second time. Because the next time you meet someone like Marcus, in a classroom, on the battlefield, or down the street, you'll face a choice. Will you stay silent, or will you speak?